have you here on this live stream with me, whether you join me partway through or whether you are watching on the replay. It is wonderful to have you with me today. So today we are going to be talking about tracking. So if you are not familiar with my channel, my name is Angela and this is Time Out with Angela, and here on this channel we talk about the weight loss journey and everything surrounding that. Oops. So there we go, just a bit of background noise I needed to get rid of. After all, we are live. This is live. So on this channel we talk about the health and the wellness journey, in particular things that support with weight loss. I'm on a journey to improve my health, and as a result of focusing on health improvements, I've lost 115 pounds to date. And what we do on this channel is we talk about the tips, the hints, the hacks that has helped me, not just to improve my health and not just to lose weight, but also to keep it off. And we touch on all of those aspects of the health and wellness journey, such as food. We look at recipes and cooking. We look at shopping and shopping hauls. We do lots of chit chat. So that's what we do here on the channel. And today we are talking about tracking. If you are new to this channel, then I am following the Weight Watchers plan, and that to date has really supported me to lose the weight. And I just want to clarify that, because I often say that I've lost my weight following the Weight Watchers plan, but I just want to clarify that the Weight Watchers plan, or plans, because I've done I think 5 or 6 different plans with them, what the plans has done is it's helped me to finally put in place some healthy habits. That's what the plan has enabled me to do. It's helped me to look at my health, look at my habits, and to put healthy habits in place. Helped me to change my habits that weren't serving me. And that, I think, has been the bulk of where Weight Watchers has really made the difference for me. I was asked the other day in a question that I answered as part of my live stream, my Q&A, is whether or not I will, continue following the Weight Watchers plan in the future. And it was a really interesting question. And it really got me to think about where I am with it and where Weight Watchers and their plan or plans fit into my life. Hence why I'm just coming with some clarification. So Weight Watchers has definitely helped me to look at my habits and to put healthy habits in place. They've definitely done that. Weight Watchers has helped me believe in myself and helped to build my confidence. And they've also enabled me to look further into food nutrition as well, and how food is made and what we consume. And they've definitely supported me with that. What I realise is that the power is not in Weight Watchers. The power isn't Weight Watchers. The power is in me and the knowledge and the skills that I've been able to develop via Weight Watchers. So whilst I say that I'm following the Weight Watchers plan, really I'm at the point now where I'm able to use my knowledge and the confidence that I've gained through following the Weight Watchers plan to help me to live a healthy lifestyle. So yeah, I just wanted to give that little spin on it, because if somebody asks, am I still following Weight Watchers to a T? The answer is no. The answer is no. I'm still using the app and I'm still using the program, still very much involved in the program, but I'm not using it like I used to, because now I've learned a lot about myself and my habits, and that's helping me to fly and grow and develop in my own confidence. Which brings me to what I wanted to talk about today, really nicely, actually, really, really nicely. Because one of the things that I hear, and you know me, guys, if you've ever seen me before, if you've ever worked with me, if you've ever come across me, if you've ever watched any of my videos, there's two things most people know about me. Two things. The first thing is I am the podcast queen. I've always got my earbuds in, always listening to a podcast. I was listening to a podcast literally before I jumped on. It's about cult religion. I'm really into listening to cult religion at the moment. It is so fascinating. So I'm listening to cult religion on Spotify at the moment. So number one, I am the podcast queen. Love listening to podcasts. And the second thing most people will know about me is I take nothing for granted. I question everything. I question it. And that was as a result of being in a cult religion, growing up in a cult religion, and being suckered in. And now I'm on the other side. I look at everything as much as I possibly can with independent of fresh eyes. Which leads me, again, back really nicely to this. One of the things that, when I've been following the Weight Watchers plan, Weight Watchers themselves say this. The members say this. But also, not just Weight Watchers, everywhere in the industry say this. Any weight loss program that has an app, that has a program that they want you to follow, will tell you this. And they will tell you that you need to track. Why? For accountability. And I want to explore that today. I want to explore that. So, what does that mean? What does that mean when we say we want to track for accountability? And I'm putting my hands up. I used to say this all the time, is that I need to track for accountability. And I got to the point I really started to think, what does that mean? What does tracking for accountability mean? See, when I think about accountability, I think of doing my homework and handing it in to my teacher so they can mark it, they can assess it. But also, knowing that I had to hand that homework in kept me accountable, because I had to do it, because I knew that I had to hand it in, and there would be consequences if I didn't. There'd be consequences if I didn't do that. And when I started the weight loss journey, I was very much told I need to track for accountability. And I never questioned it, didn't question it. It was new, it was fresh, it was something different. This is what was going to lead me to get weight loss. So I started tracking. But then realised at the end of the day, nobody ever sees that. Nobody ever sees it. It goes into the app. My coach didn't see it. My community didn't see it. There was nobody sitting in the app within Weight Watchers looking at what I'd tracked or what I hadn't tracked. Nobody was seeing it. So that made me think, well, what does if I'm going to be tracking for accountability and I'm tracking to be accountable, what does that actually mean? So I came to the realization that, okay, if nobody's going to see it, then it's keeping myself accountable. And then I started to think about that. And I was like, what do I mean by that? What do I mean when I say I need to keep myself accountable? And what I was meaning by that was two things. So on the Weight Watchers plan, and this can be any plan, it doesn't have to be Weight Watchers. I've done Slimming World, I've done MyFitnessPal, I've done liquid diets, I've counted calories. It doesn't matter what plan it is or what program you're doing. When I'd say that I would be tracking my calories or tracking my points or my sins for accountability, there was two things that what I was understanding by that. And the first thing was that I needed to stay within my budget. A budget that somebody or an app had worked out was the amount of points that I needed on MyFitnessPal, the amount of calories I needed, or the amount of macros that I needed to lose weight. Some AI robot had worked that out. And I'm not saying that that's good or bad. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that that's good or bad. I'm just saying that somewhere in the grand scheme of the universe, an AI had worked out that, Angela, for your height, your age, your weight, your gender, you need this amount of points or calories or sins in order to lose weight. So I was tracking to stay within that budget to lose weight. So in that sense, I was tracking so that I could be accountable in that respect. The other reason I was tracking was to see whether I was sticking to what I said I was going to do. And let me have a little sip. So there was those two areas where I was tracking in my head for accountability, because that's what accountability meant to me, was that I've said I'm going to stick within my 23 points a day and my 28 weeklies. And when I'm tracking, I'm going to be accountable to myself to stay within that budget. Now, I don't know whether that was true accountability, but what that often led to was a lot of shame and a lot of guilt and a lot of self-judgment, especially on those weeks that I couldn't stick to that budget. That's what it led to. And I think that's why, for me personally, I have always found it a challenge to track. Now, some people find tracking really easy and they love it. And if that is you, go for it. Go for it. I'm absolutely delighted for you that tracking is comes naturally to you, that you find it easy. It's not a burden. It's not a bind. You enjoy it and it works for you. Go for it. Please go for it. But for me, I didn't enjoy tracking and I found it really, really difficult. And, if you were with me yesterday, I was talking about some of those feelings that really compounded my journey. And I would often feel like a failure. I felt like I was failing. I felt like I couldn't do this journey. I felt like I'm always going to stay fat. I'm never going to lose the weight. I always felt like that. And one of the reasons that I felt like that was because I hated tracking. I didn't enjoy it. I really, really didn't. And then I started to realise that for me and for me alone, something is missing. Something is missing because Weight Watchers, Slimming World, MyFitnessPal, all of these things were telling me to track my food. And that was going to lead to accountability, and that in turn would lead to weight loss. And I would think about it, and I was like, I didn't quite agree. I didn't quite agree because on my journey, for me, and you may completely disagree with me, and that's absolutely fine. But for me, I had to start tracking the things that were meaningful. And tracking my overnight oats and tracking me fruit or tracking, a shepherd's pie, to me, that wasn't meaningful. Yes, it gave me data. Yes, it gave me information. And sometimes that would help me to lose weight and sometimes it didn't. And if I went over my points, what that would do is lead to a lot of shame and guilt and judgment and making me feel like a failure. And I realised, actually, it's not my food that I need to track. I realised it was much bigger than that. I needed to track my behaviours. And you know what? It's so funny because Weight Watchers teach and they train their people in behaviour change. Their coaches are all amazing. They're fantastic. They are behaviour change coaches. So what I would sit and I would think, well, if the coaches that are supporting us are trained to support us about changing our behaviours, then why am I, and this might not be the same for you, you may completely disagree with me and that's absolutely fine, but I was like, if the coaches are trained to help me change my behaviours, then why am I tracking my food? Why am I tracking my breakfast, my same breakfast every day? Why am I tracking the same lunches every single day? Why am I tracking my dinners every single day? Why am I tracking the food? Why am I not tracking my behaviour? So when I hear that in the community that I'm tracking, and usually they're tracking their food for accountability, in my mind, that doesn't make sense. Now, my mind, let me tell you, doesn't work like everybody else's. So if tracking your food for accountability makes sense to you, go for it. Who am I to tell you that you're wrong? Go for it. But for me, tracking my food for accountability didn't make sense. And I realised that actually what brings weight loss and keep weight loss off is behaviours, behaviour change. That is what brings weight loss and keeping the weight off. And and I went through that stage where I was like, right, I need to make those swaps. I need to throw out all those high pointed, high fat, high sugar foods and start eating all the low fat, low sugar, low zero pointed foods to lose weight. I needed to do that. Wasn't sustainable for me. And now, as you know, I love my full fat foods. I love my full fat cheese. I love my full fat products. And I built them in because, again, it went back to this rhetoric that to lose weight, you need to swap to those low pointed things. You need to swap food out. Whereas I realised, actually, that's not the issue. And yes, I do agree that there's an element of eating whole foods and nutritious food and reducing the crap. Totally accept that. But it was the behaviours, because it was my behaviour that got me overweight. It was my behaviour that led me to 10 stone overweight. So I was like, well, why am I tracking my food but not tracking my behaviour, the behaviour that got me to being 10 stone overweight? Why am I tracking my food and not my mindset, the mindset that underpinned the behaviour that led me to gain 10 stone? And yes, you may argue that it was the food that led me to gain 10 stone. And yes, you're absolutely right. But I am still eating the bulk of the foods that made me overweight. I'm still eating them. Still eating them. Not in the same quantities, admittedly, but I'm still eating them. But it was the behaviour around that food that led me to overeat and gain weight. So I started to take a different approach to tracking. Started looking at it differently. And I started to think, when I talk about accountability, what that means to me, and this might be completely different to you, and that's okay. What being accountable means to me is that I'm going to do what I said I'm going to do. That is what being accountable means to me. And accountability might mean something different to you. But accountability to me isn't, I'm going to track the same dinners, I'm going to track the same lunches, I'm going to track the same snacks, I'm going to track the same breakfast. I'm going to track those day after day after day after day, month after month, year after year. To me, that is not accountability. It may be to you, and I totally respect it if it is to you, but it's not to me. To me, accountability is, am I going to do what I said I'm going to do? I said I am going to reduce the portions of that steak and kidney pie and chips that I love. Have I done that? Accountability is I'm going to put my shoes on and go for a walk when the weather's better. Have I done that? Accountability to me is I'm going to go shopping. I'm going to buy the foods that I love and make healthy choices in the foods that I buy. Have I done that? That's what accountability means to me. Rather than tracking the same foods over and over and over again. Excuse me. So when I had that realization, and I was listening to people in my community saying that they are tracking and staying on track for accountability, I was like, if that makes sense to you, good, but it didn't. It was like double Dutch to me. I couldn't understand that. I was like, how is tracking your food day after day after day giving you accountability? Surely accountability is saying, I'm looking at the behaviours that got me in this situation that made me overweight. And I'm going to track the behaviour. So, for example, I know that what led me to being overweight was overeating. And if you were with me yesterday, I was talking about that whole emotional eating. And the behaviour that made me gain weight was overeating and not knowing when to stop, or knowing when to stop but pushing past that and still eating. So I had to learn to recognise the signals of when I was full and to stop eating. And in that way, that for me was true accountability. It wasn't about what is it I'm eating that's going to lead me to accountability. It's saying, when I am full, I'm going to stop eating. And then looking at that and saying, okay, how many times today have I listened in and stopped eating when I'm full? How many times this week have I stopped eating when I felt I was filling up? How many times this month have I said I was going to do? How many times this month have I done what I said I was going to do? And I've slowed my eating down. I've eaten mindfully and I've stopped when I am hungry. To me, in my little brain, that is accountability. And then I would have to then unpick that a little bit and think, okay, when I was overeating, what was the situation? What was the situation? What was the circumstance? Was I stressed? Was I tired? Was I feeling lonely? Was I upset? Was I bored? What was the situation that made me turn to food? So, as I mentioned yesterday, sometimes we go looking for food and we think, what do I want to eat? But that's the wrong question. For me, it was totally the wrong question. And I had to start asking myself, instead of asking, what do I want to eat? I started asking myself, how am I feeling? what am I feeling? Because what I wanted to eat was tied up in the emotion. So I had to start asking myself a different question. Instead of what do I want to eat and cupboard surfing, I was now asking myself, what am I feeling? And then I'll look at my situation that was leading me to food, that was leading me to overeating, and then identifying the pattern and looking at the pattern and saying, okay, over the course of the week, I'm overeating in the evenings because I've left a long gap between lunch and dinner. So when I get home, I'm overeating. I'm having a small meal, having some snacks, and then I have my dinner. But because I'm tired, I'm overeating. I'm stuffing those feelings down. So when I started looking at that, what are my patterns and what is the solution? So again, yesterday I mentioned that, I now have a toolbox full of tools. So if I'm feeling tired or lonely, if I'm feeling tired, I've got my electric blanket downstairs. I might just stretch out and, watch TV. If I'm feeling lonely, I might call a friend, or I might go out to see, my family. Or hang out, make plans at the weekend. If I'm bored, I might say, well, I'm going to go in the garden, or I've got, something in the house to tidy up, or I might get involved in some crafting, or I'm going to listen to another podcast. I've got a toolbox of things that I can do. I've got solutions rather than thinking I'm going to eat. Because I realised that eating wasn't the problem, not even low pointed foods, not even 0 pointed foods. All that was doing was compounding the problem. And I was tracking the problem. I was tracking the problem. What I needed to do was track the behaviour, not the food, which is a lot of what, we're taught in slimming clubs. And if tracking the food works for you, go for it. As I said, I'm not here to give advice. I'm just sharing what has worked for me. So I realised that I had to identify what the behaviours were that were leading me to overeat. And understand why, when that signal came that I was full, why I wasn't stopping, and what emotions was I trying to suppress. And then I had to figure out this pattern. Figure out the pattern. And I was eating when I was happy, when I was sad, when I was lonely, but most of all when I was tired. When I was tired, that was when I was eating most. And looking at that, I suffer with fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue. And when at the height of my fibro and chronic fatigue, that is when I put on a significant amount of weight, because I was tired, because I was eating when I was tired. I was suppressing my tiredness with food. So I had to sit and look at my pattern. And that is what I started to track. I realised I'd been tracking the wrong things. I needed to track the pattern, track the behaviour, because it's the behaviour that is going to get the weight loss. And yes, the food will too. But you could still eat plenty of zero-pointed foods and gain weight. So, I think that says it all. You could still eat healthy foods, low-pointed foods, reasonably pointed foods, and still gain weight or not lose. So I figured out it wasn't so much staying within the points budget that was going to bring the weight loss. And yes, no, let me rephrase that. Staying within the budget is going to bring weight loss. But how sustainable is that? When we look at the community, we see so many people are able to stay in their budget within the first couple of weeks because it's new, it's fresh. But after that, they struggle to stay within the budget. Why? Because they haven't addressed the behaviours that led to weight gain. And that's just my personal observance. And I know that for me and my journey, when I was tracking my food, I could never understand why I just wasn't aligned with it. I really, honestly, truly struggled with it. And I did the very best I could. And some days I was much better than others. Some weeks I was much better than others. But generally, I really struggled with tracking. I wasn't aligned with it because it didn't feel right for me. I felt something was missing. And last year, it took me 4 years to work this out, guys. It took me 4 years. Last year, I figured it out. And I figured out I was tracking the wrong things. I was tracking the wrong things. I was tracking my food. That's what I was being told to track for weight loss. And I realised, no, I need to track behaviour, my behaviour, and then look at my pattern. Every time I overate, all the times that I couldn't stop, when I was eating, what time of the day was I overeating, how was I feeling? And then once I knew the pattern, I could then find the solution. So the other thing about accountability was I realised that it's not so much about me being accountable, because I'm like, accountable to what? What am I being accountable to? I realised accountability was the wrong word for me. It might be the right word for you, and if it is, I respect that. But for me, it wasn't about being accountable, because for me, accountability just ended up in me feeling this sense of shame and guilt and loads of judgment and judging myself because I couldn't track for a full week without missing a few meals. I really struggled with it. So there was a lot of judgment there. Why can't I do this? I have, there's people who are tracking, they've got these huge tracking streaks. I think the most tracking streak I've ever had is about 20 days. And even that was a struggle. That was pretty good for me. I really struggled with it. So I felt shame and I felt guilt that I couldn't do it. And I was hearing people saying, they're tracking for accountability, and I'm pleased for you if that's you. But I realised for me, it's not accountability at all. I needed to hold myself responsible. And there's a massive difference between being accountable and being responsible. I needed to be responsible for doing what I said I'm going to do. Oh, my lights have just gone out. Oh, bear with me. Oh, my batteries fell out and everything's gone off. There we go. Let's plug that back in. There we go. Let's put my lights back on. There we go. Hope you can see me now. I'm back. Sorry about that. The battery went on my laptop and my lights all went out. Yeah. So I realised that it wasn't about holding myself accountable, but rather I was going to hold myself responsible and take responsibility for me and my journey. I was now going to be clear about the goals that I am going to work on and hold myself responsible and say, come on, Angela, be responsible. You are now having to be responsible for, the goals that you've set and your commitment to yourself to achieving them. So when I started tracking my behaviours, I started to look at what are the behaviours that's going to bring me weight loss. What are the behaviours that's going to bring me weight loss? So for me, it was about eating slowly, eating mindfully, eating that nutrient dense food, focusing on that nutrition, focusing on the whole foods, moving my body, drinking my water. Not that that specifically brings you weight loss, but it's part and parcel of that. Getting that good quality sleep, building that strong mindset, having that social life and socializing with others, with like-minded people who was going to support that weight loss and help me with me feeling and being responsible to me without the shame, the guilt and the judgment. And any behaviours that were not going to support weight loss, get rid of. Get rid of. Any behaviours that was not going to support me, get rid of. So I then needed to go back to those patterns. What are the patterns that I've identified? And what can I put in place to support me with that? And following on from yesterday, the other question that I started to ask myself is, what need? Because, we all have wants, we all have needs, When I was trying to comfort myself in that food, when I was covered surfing, even though I was full, I'd be asking myself, what need is this food going to fulfill? What need is it going to solve for me? And when I started to ask those questions, instead of what food do I want to eat, started asking myself, what am I feeling And then I would ask myself, if I did decide, you know what, I want the bag of crisps or I want, you know, the cake. Well, what need is it going to solve? And then what I would then do is track the behaviour. And sometimes I'd end up eating it, but I would track the behaviour and I would track how I was feeling, what that led me to do, led me to the cupboard to eat the food or to want the food. What time was that? And what was the outcome? And when I started to do that, I started to recognize that pattern. And I wasn't cupboard surfing. I didn't have the need for food. I wasn't in that emotional state in the day. It was always in the evening. And that was my problem. And I would eat, I'd have my dinner, but then about 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, sat there on my own with the cats. Something was missing. And that's when I would start cupboard surfing and looking for something to eat. The behaviour had changed. So I needed to start tracking that, started to track the behaviour, and then I could then find the solution to say, okay, and the solution for me, and everybody's different. Sometimes people say in the evening they get their colouring books out, they get out their jewellery making kits or their jigsaws. They find something to meet that need. So when I started practicing intermittent fasting, that really helped. One, it helped my mindset because I was really pushing that time back. But even though I finish eating now at around 7 o'clock, sometimes I carry on working till it's late, 8. Sometimes my last, one on a Wednesdays, I finish working at 9. And sometimes at that point, I'm tired. I'm very tired. I've had a long day. I'm now lonely because I'm switching off the computer and the house is silent. It's just me. And sometimes I'm thinking, what can I eat? And I recognise that pattern. It wasn't that I was hungry. I wasn't hungry at all. But I was asking myself that question and looking in the cupboards, what can I eat? Because I'm bored, I'm lonely, I'm tired. So, yeah, I can see I've got quite a few people with me. Thank you so much for joining me. I just think that sometimes in the weight loss sector, in the weight loss community, at Weight Watchers and outside of Weight Watchers, whether you count calories, you track your sins, you're on MyFitnessPal, you track your macros, we can get so caught up in tracking the food. We track the food. We're staying within the points. We're staying within the budget. We're staying within our calories. But that doesn't always bring long-term success. For me, tracking was a bind. It was a burden, and I hated it. I hated it. I still do. I haven't tracked a thing since September. I haven't tracked a thing in terms of food. I haven't tracked the things that the weight loss companies tell you to track. Because there's always an agenda why they're telling you to track what they want you to track. There's an agenda why they tell you to do what they want you to do. There's always an agenda. And I'm not saying that that's good or bad. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying there is a reason all of these companies tell you to do what they want you to do. And sometimes it's just really good just to stop, sit back and have a think about it. So for me, I don't track. I stopped tracking in September. Haven't tracked a thing since September. And I've lost 15 pounds since September. 15 pounds without tracking a morsel. And I'm not endorsing or encouraging anybody to do that. That's worked for me after being on a very long journey of understanding what foods work for me and what foods don't. But in saying that, I wish I'd understood the value of tracking my behaviours over tracking food, because if I'd have tracked my behaviours, who knows, I might have been a lot closer to my goal than I am now. But yeah, I just think it's so easy to get caught up in those numbers, you know, and we hear people in the community say, you know, I've stuck with my calories, I'm not losing weight. I've stuck with my points, I'm not losing weight. I've stuck with those sins, I'm not losing weight. And you might be staying within those calories or your points or your sins or your macros, but you might still be overeating. And I realised that staying within your parameters is one thing, but changing the behaviour that got me 10 stone overweight, that is completely a different thing. So when I realised that, I stopped tracking the food and started focusing and paying attention and tracking my behaviour. Looking at, you know, why am I overeating? What's leading me to overeat? What time of the day am I overeating? What am I feeling when I'm overeating? So asking myself those questions and then having those solutions to it. And instead of holding myself accountable, which for me led to shame, guilt and judgment, I started thinking, no, I'm taking responsibility. Going to take responsibility and be responsible. I hold myself responsible for my behaviours. So where do you stand on this, guys? Where do you stand? Do you find tracking is of value to you? Do you track your food? And how is that helping you? Or do you track your behaviours instead of or in addition to tracking your food? Where do you stand on that? I'd be really interested to know, where do you stand on tracking your behaviours? And as I said at the top, you know, I've lost the bulk of my weight with Weight Watchers at less than £0.5 pound a week. And I'm super proud of that. Don't get me wrong for a moment. I'm super proud of that. And I'll never stop shouting about that. But I just wonder whether if I well, can't look back in retrospect, but now that I know that tracking for me, tracking my behaviour is critical. It's critical. You know, the Weight Watchers train their coaches as behaviour coaches to change behavior. When you look at the coaching in the weight loss industry, people are behavior change coaches. Why are we still tracking our food? And I'm not saying that we shouldn't, but why is all that focus still on tracking the food? Why is there no focus on our behavior and tracking the behavior? So, yeah, I would love to see more within the Weight Watchers program around tracking behaviors, something in the tool to help us to track how we feel it. And they used to have those things. We used to have a little section where, you know, we could write in how we were feeling that week and give ourselves a little smiley face or a glum face. All of that is gone. But I'd be interested to know, guys, where are you? And, you know, there's a lot of people who watch my videos, watch my channel, and they're not doing Weight Watchers. They're doing different programs, Slimming World, some are counting calories, some are not doing any program. They're just eating less, tracking those behaviors and moving more and seeing great results. So, yeah, you know, I'd just be interested in where you are and what your views are on whether you track your behaviors and whether you track your behaviors and your food, or one or the other. Yeah, I'd be very interested in that. So those are my thoughts. Those are my insights. Yeah, I'm a thinker, guys. I think about things sometimes too deeply. Sometimes too deep. But yeah, I don't take anything for face value. I like to question myself on why I'm doing something. And if somebody tells me you need to do this, my first question is why? Why do I need to do that? How's that going to benefit me? How am I going to make a difference? What changes can I expect? Yeah, that's just me. That is just me. That is just me. So guys, do let me know. Pop a comment in the chat box, in the comment box below, and let me know your thoughts, where you stand. And as I reiterate all the time, I share my experience and my thoughts and my idea. This is what I share is not advice. I'm not a nutritionist. I'm not a medical practitioner. I'm not a dietitian. I'm not a scientist. I'm none of those things. So I am not giving any advice whatsoever. I'm sharing with you my, you know, my muses, my ramblings, my thoughts, and what has worked for me. Doesn't mean it's going to work for you. That's down to you to decide what's going to work for you. And if what you're doing is working for you, carry on. Don't let me, you know, put a fly in the ointment, so to speak, you know. Yeah, and everything I share on this channel, it is purely for entertainment purposes. Yeah. So there we go, guys. There we go. So that is it for me today. And I will be back tomorrow. So whatever you're doing, have a wonderful, wonderful day. And guys, if you came in halfway through, please go back when you've got some time and watch it right from the top. That would really help me out. And also what would also help me out on this channel is if you chose another video or a live stream and watch that too. If you could just let it run right to the very, very end, 1 or 2 a day, that would make a massive difference. It would help me to reach my goal. So guys, there we go. Thank you so much for being here. And if you're watching and you are not subscribed to the channel and you think that my thoughts and my views might help you, then feel free to click that subscribe button and hit the notification bell. And yeah, and leave a comment and give the video a thumbs up as well. Okay, guys, that is it from me, and I will see you tomorrow. Take care now. Bye.